Hello everyone and welcome to the 3.0 Shield Specialist Vanguard overview and my first ever tank spec overview. We're taking a look at the old tank spec, the old Vanguard tank spec, which is a pretty nice little tank spec. It's actually a pretty good tank spec for beginners because we have a lot of things like passive mitigation. There's not a lot of things we have to keep up. There are a couple of things, but there's not a lot. If we compare it to something like the Shadow or the Juggernaut, then we are mostly passive mitigation. We'll take a look at our utilities now. We'll take a look at what's new first as well. New ability that we get at level 57 is Ion Storm. It replaces our Ion Pulse, and it does more damage, and affected targets are impaired for 45 seconds, which reduces the force and tech damage they deal for 5%. Also deals a really nice amount of damage. It also procs off of your Pulse Engine, if I can find it. Where the hell is Pulse? There it is. Pulse Engine. Ion Cell is when Ion Cell is active, direct damage has a 50% chance to trigger a Pulse Engine, which finishes the cooldown of Ion Storm and causes it to channel for half the time. So by default, it will channel for 3 seconds. It has a very cool animation as well. So it will channel for 3 seconds. After it will, when that procs, it will channel for 1.5 seconds. So it's very good for generating threat and deals a very nice amount of damage over 1.5 seconds instead of 3. So it's very good. Plus it gives the target the debuff as well. Which again affects the target, reduces the damage they deal. So again, that's very nice for us as a tank. We'll take a look at our utilities. Battlefield Training is a pretty nice, just a nice passive. Increases movement speed by 15%. Handy if we want to get out of something. Also handy if we want to get to something. Bear in mind that we do have things like Storm. There are certain fights where it is going to be helpful, namely Sword Squadron, where you have to kind of kite the rapid fire that goes on. You have to kind of kite it around. You don't want to stand in that. Again, it's very, very useful. That movement speed, passive movement speed, increased by 15%. It's pretty nice for getting out of things and getting to things as well as that. Next one we go for Paralytic Combat Stims. You recharge 10 energy cells when stunned, immobilized, knocked down, or otherwise incapacitated. Now this is going to happen to you a lot in hard mode flashpoints. This will be happening a hell of a lot when you're doing HMs. So you're gonna be getting stunned a lot in the level 60 HMs. You might as well benefit from it. As a tank, you are gonna get stunned. We're thinking Depths of Manan. Really annoying Depths of Manan to get when you're getting stunned a lot. The first 2 bosses just stun and throw you around. So it is nice to gain a little bit of a benefit from that. So it is situational. I would take it for doing flashpoints. When Into the Fray is triggered, it would also deal damage to the attacker if the attacker is in 10 meters. Into the Fray is... Where is Into the Fray again? I can't remember what it is. Into the Fray is increase the duration of a reactive shield. Suffering direct damage from area attacks. Generates 2 energy cells. Again, it's a nice little passive, so it will deal extra damage as well when Into the Fray is active. So, again, something to bear in mind. It's not really critical for a tank, really. I mean, we will be getting hit by things. It assumes we are going to be getting hit, but it's not really critical. You can take it if you want. Entangling Heat, Tactical Surge, Ion Pulse, Explosive Surge, reduce the movement speed of affected targets by 50%. Can come in handy if things are getting away from you, maybe, but again, we shouldn't be allowing things like that to happen. Reducing the movement speed, it has no real benefit in PvE. PvP, it's a decent benefit, but for PvE, unless the things are moving away from you, then yeah. But again, Explosive Surge, Tactical Surge, Ion Pulse, these kinds of things should be generating enough threat for you to keep attention on the enemy, so they shouldn't be coming away from you. It will help if you're fighting melee classes. If you take this, if you take Muzzled Augs, increases the range of Ion Pulse, Tactical Surge by 5 meters and the radius of Explosive Surge by 2 meters. Again, can be useful if trash is spread out and we want to get a threat on trash and it is spread out. So it can come in handy as well. Muzzled Augs or Sharp Satchel. Increase the damage of Explosive Surge by 25%. You can either take this or this. It tends to be a choice. If the ads tend to be spread out, if you're fighting trash and they're spread out, you maybe want muzzle augs instead. Explosive Surge increasing its damage is pretty nice. Again, it's going to help you with threat. Explosive Surge does generate a lot of AoE threat as well. So again, that will help us. Doing more damage means more threat, so it is pretty nice to have. Again, it's good for questing as well, just giving us that extra little bit of damage. Iron Will, reduce the cooldown of Tenacity and hold the line by 5 seconds. Useful on some fights, particularly if we did Kadamimu in HM. Kadamimu was one of those ones where we'd want to reduce the cooldown of hold the line because it broke the shackles. If we were in a pretty bad group that didn't break the tank shackles for us, we could break our own. So if we're getting knocked back a lot and we want to prevent being knocked around, hold the line is very, very handy. So again, Iron Will is useful, can be useful on certain fights. Defensive measures, Harpoon immobilizes the target for 3 seconds. In addition, the cooldown of Stealth Scan is reduced by 5 seconds, and it will immobilize any enemy it reveals. Not very good for PvE, tends to be more PvP. Harpoon immobilizing the target, yeah, it's not really that handy, to be honest with you. It doesn't stun it, it just immobilizes them, so it stops them getting away from you. If you're harpooning a target towards you in PvE, it's generally going to be attacking you. So there's no real benefit to that in PvE. Electroshield, reactive shield will be zapping attackers for 6 to 9 elemental damage. Again, can be useful if we are struggling to get AoE threat. If there's a lot of things hitting us, it can again reflect that damage and help us out with a bit of threat. But again, it should all be used. It's not really that necessary, to be honest, while tanking. Getting threat, AoE threat is our big thing, but again, we should be using reactive shield as a defensive cooldown, not an offensive cooldown to generate threat. So again, it's just a little bit of extra damage. It can be useful while questing. If you're doing soloing, can be a bit useful. Advance the line, hold the line, increase the duration of hold the line by 4 seconds. Again, situational, it can be good for getting out of things, good for things that have knockbacks, again, because hold the line will prevent you getting knocked back. So again, having hold the line by an additional 4 seconds does come in handy on certain fights, increasing its duration and reducing its cooldown as well. Use it with Iron Will, it can be pretty handy. Reduce the cooldown of Harpoon by 15 seconds. Tends not to be the most useful. Generally, we'll be storming up to most enemies. Can be useful again if we're fighting 2 ads. If you've got 2 ranged enemies that are quite far apart, we would storm up to one and then harpoon the other one. So, but again, we tend to do this at the start of the fight, so it tends not to be a utility that we take. Sonic Rebounder, we do tend to go with. Sonic Round protects all friendly targets in the area of impact, excludes yourself. Grants Sonic Rebound, reflects the next direct single target damage back to the attacker. Very useful again for protecting your allies and generating threat. Bear in mind that Sonic Rebounder is your AoE taunt, so it is pretty nice. Good defensive cooldown and a very good protecting your your group members as well. They take less damage. Your healer will appreciate that. So again, very useful. Some fights it will be more useful than others, but it's useful especially if you've got melee DPS that are getting hit by things, especially on fights like the Underlurker. If you AoE taunt those ads and get that Sonic Rebounder, they'll take less damage. All the DPS around the ads will be taking less damage. So again, containment tactics, reduce the cooldown of Cryo Grenade by 10 seconds. Slightly less useful. Again, Cryo Grenade we can use if we need to do a bit of crowd control. If an enemy is running away from us, if we're tanking and an enemy runs away from us, we can throw a quick Cryo Grenade if our harpoon's on cooldown. So again, take it if you need it. Frontline defense, reduce the cooldown of Riot Strike by 2 seconds. Again, certain fights where things need to be interrupted, because I like to interrupt a lot of things personally. If we look at certain, I don't think there's anything really that needs to be interrupted in the 60 flashpoints. I'm just trying to think what needs to be. But I like interrupting things. I like to try interrupting things anyway. Again, as a tank, things you want to interrupt are things like Carbonize and Cryo Grenade. Anything that's going to stun you. that you can prevent being stunned is worth interrupting. So it is worth taking, definitely. If the target's going to do things, most bosses can't be interrupted, so it's not really good for raiding. It's not great in Flashpoint. It's alright on trash. I'd maybe take something else from this, maybe, you know, hold the line or Electroshield or something, or maybe even Containment Tactics. Again, Containment Tactics is the same, as bad on the boss. Same with Harpoon, kind of the Harpoon accelerated reel, so you're going to be taking one of these two, I guess, for the bosses that you're doing. But again, it's useful for things that can be interrupted, because most bosses, most raid and Flashpoint bosses cannot be interrupted, so comes in handy at times, but again, it's very, very situational. We'll move on to Heroic now. Guard Cannon is pretty nice. Damaging a target with our shoulder cannon missiles heals you for 5% of our total health. That's per missile, so you get 4 missiles. That's 20% of your health returned if you can fire off your missiles. You can spread your missiles out and get the 5%, or if you're taking a lot of damage, if the healer dies, for example, and you want to get 20% of your health back very, very quickly, because bear in mind your missiles are off the global cooldown, then, you know, comes in handy. That Guard Cannon, very good. For doing pugs, generally we roll with Guard Cannon, because we don't know what kind of healer we're going to get, so it's just nice. It's just a nice little 5% heal for ourselves. Paralytic Augs, increase the stun duration of Cryo Grenade and Neural Surge by 1 second. Not too handy. Neural Surge is our AoE stun, and Cryo Grenade is our single target stun. 1 second's not going to make a hell of a lot of difference, to be honest with you. Tends to be a bit of a waste, that one. Emergency Stims allows Adrenaline Rush to be activated while stunned and causes the Adrenaline Rush to purge stun effects when activated. It won't work against incapacitating effects or scripted stuns, which are used by Flashpoint and Operation bosses and other special non-player characters. That kind of puts you off. Certain fights it will work. It's good on Revan. If you're doing Revan, the story mode version of Revan, not the story mode, the solo mode version of Revan, which he does stun you with the thing, it does work on that. Depends on the boss, you're going to have to try it out. I haven't really tried it on that many bosses, but it is quite nice. I wonder if it would work on the bonus boss on Korriban, the Korriban Flashpoint. If it does, I would take it, because again, Adrenaline Rush purges or stuns, and I don't know, because it is quite a scripted stun actually, but you can break out of it, so I don't know if it would work there. I don't know, but again, if it purges the stun effects, it gives you essentially a second breakout of stun. So if you're getting stunned a lot and it's not a scripted thing, again, I would rather try and interrupt the stun if possible, personally, but you know, it's a good option to have there. Emergency Stims. Re-energizers. When reserve power cell is activated, it recharges 10 cells over the next 5 seconds immediately and increases threat towards all current enemies by a small amount if Ion Cell is active, or reduces threat if Ion Cell is not active. As a tank, we'll have Ion Cell active. If you're struggling for threat and you're struggling to manage your energy, then it would be pretty nice, because again, increasing threat is pretty nice. But generally, we don't really struggle to manage our threat, to be honest with you. We're not really in a position to be struggling. If you are struggling, it is nice to have that reserve power cell there for you. This one, Battle Focus increases damage done by 5% while Ion Cell is active, and damage reduction while is not active. Again, it's okay. Battle Focus increases your crit chance. It is your your only DPS cooldown as a Vanguard, essentially. Yeah, that's I think that's all we got, really. Where is it? It's reserve power cell, recharge cells, battle focus, there it is. Increases range and tech crit chance by 25% for 15 seconds. Pretty nice to use on the opener, actually, for yourself. But again, increase all damage done by 5%. It's nice to have that. If you're struggling for threat, again, I would maybe go for that. But again, our goal as a tank is not to deal damage. If you're doing questing, or if you're fighting a boss or something like that, maybe you'd want it. Maybe if you're doing soloing, it might be useful. But again, should we be relying on the tank to deal damage? Not really. I'd rather have the heals from shoulder missile, personally. I'd rather have a bit more defensive things. Charge the line, hold the line, increases your movement speed by an additional 45% while active. Very good for getting out of things as well. Again, if we chain Battlefield Training, Iron Will, Advance the Line, and Charge the Line together, gives us a nice bit of mobility. So in fights where we need to be mobile, we're thinking the last boss on Kadamimu here again. Very useful, gets out of that fire. It means we can, you know, gets our shackles broken and gets us out of that. Again, useful on Sword Squadron as well if you wanna be kiting the thing again as far away from the group as possible. So you want to be, I can't remember what the thing's called. It's a series of missile things it fires at you, and it fires them at the ground essentially, and you've got to move around. Very useful there. 45% movement speed increase, up from 30%. Well, in fact, it's an additional 45, so it's 30 plus 45. It will be efficient tools, increase the range of harpoon and shoulder cannon by 10 meters, and eliminates the energy cost of cryo grenade and neural surge. I quite like this for energy management actually, because neural surge is particularly useful on trash. So if we're doing flashpoints, neural surge, again, making it free of energy cost is good for energy management. But other than that, it's not great. Increasing the range of harpoon shoulder cannon is nice. Again, if there are enemies that are quite far apart, we can pull them in basically, or if we see something coming in the distance, like a patrol that's coming in the distance, then you know it can be pretty useful on certain flashpoints. Can be useful for that. Certain operations, it's not going to be huge for operations. We're probably going to take something else like re-energizers or focus stims or something like that. We're probably going to take charge the line maybe as well. So again, there are options to bear in mind for that. The other thing we get again at level 59, shield enhancer, stock strike, implant bolt, high impact bolt, should I say, the grants. Shield enhancer increases your shield by 1% for 15 seconds, and it stacks up to 3 times. That's one of the things that is new. So we'll get to our rotation, and we'll get to the things that we're going to talk about. Really, we want to start preloading our missiles. That's what we're going to start by doing. We start every fight by first getting our missiles up, making sure that we are guarding a DPS as well. Don't guard the healer. Make sure you guard a DPS. So you get 4 missiles. Bear in mind they will heal you for 20% of your health, all 4 of them, 5% per stack. So you can fire them all off at once, or you can save them. You can just fire them all off at once. You see we get that little bit of healing there. You can see the healing is for 2.6k per tick. Quite powerful actually, very powerful. So they are pretty nice. Again, you can spread them out if you want, or you can save it for emergency healing. They also help increase, do they help increase your defense anymore? I don't know. I don't think it doesn't respect the global cooldown, so it puts it on cooldown for 1 minute. They are changing this in patch 3.2. Or I think, no, patch 3.1.1, this will be changed. I think the cooldown is getting lowered, but I think it's only for DPS spec. I'm sure, I don't know if it's tank spec or not. But they are definitely making changes to that. So basically our rotation is going to open with Storm. We're going to storm up to the target. Generates a decent amount of threat. Then we want to get Stock Strike. It's generally going to be Stock Strike and then High Impact Bolt. Now Stock Strike will cause our ion cell to fire off our ion cell every single time, granting us access to High Impact Bolt. The reason for that is, of course, these shield enhancers. We want to get those shield enhancers, and we want to keep that extra 3% shield. We want to try and keep that up. That is one of our main focuses. Shield tends to be our top stat. The spec is called Shield Specialist. There is a clue there. So we want to be keeping that up. That is our goal, to get that up. Get it up as quickly as you can. Stock Strike does generate a lot of threat. Our goal then, we're going to use Ion Storm, whether it's procced or not, generally. So we're going to charge up, fire off. This is a single target. Fire that off, and then Ion Storm. So the target does force and tech damage is done. Again, if we're taking any damage, we'll probably be using Energy Blast. Again, it gives us a thing that increases our absorb shield. So again, we're going to be using things like Stock Strike, always on cooldown, always High Impact Bolt. We're trying to keep up these shield enhancers, and again we've got this off as well, which gives us a nice bit of absorption increase as well. Always using Ion Storm. You can use it off the proc, you can use it on the proc, but that will generally generate us a lot of single target threat. Quite useful actually for single target threat. Our filler tends to be things like Ion Pulse. Bear in mind you get a couple of free ones. Don't be pressing the free ones. You generally don't want to do that. You want to get your Stock Strike, you want to get your High Impact Bolt, and you want to get your Energy Blast off because they are good for your mitigation. They again keep up. Your shoulder missiles, I tend to save them for when we're taking damage. Getting your Ion Storm off, again, it's going to reduce the damage dealt. Force and tech damage by 5%, so that is pretty much what we want for a single target. AoE rotation, we tend to prioritize Explosive Surge. We want to get Explosive Surges off, and we want to get Ion Storm, and we want to get Death from Above, or Mortar Volley should I say, off as well. Mortar Volley can be used as filler in our single target. Generally we just use it as filler. Ion Pulse we can use as filler as well. Ion Pulse can proc Ion Storm, so again that's always useful to note. That our Pulse Engine, it is direct damage, any direct damage, so again if we got nothing else to press we can just use Ion Pulse. So what we do is our AoE rotation. We're generally, if we're fighting, it depends what we're fighting. Melee DPS. If there's a bunch of melee around us, then what we want to do is storm in and get our 2 free charges of that off, and then get our Ion Storm off. If Ion Storm hasn't proc, then it's worth firing the Explosive Surge 2. We get 2 freebies, so getting those 2 off, then getting our Ion Storm, then we can go to, well, if we've got everything in position, if we need to pull something else in, say there's a ranged character over there, I don't know why, we are just going to go and use the Harpoon and pull them in towards us, and then when we're standing still, we've got everything gathered up nicely, we are then going to use our Mortar Volley as our AoE. That tends to be a good threat generator. Bear in mind that the 3.0 changes, Mortar Volley can be used at any range now. It no longer has a minimum range, should I say, as it still has its maximum of 30 meters. And again, so our AoE rotation is fairly simple. Riot Gas should be used generally when there is something big that we can dodge. Bear in mind it is only melee and ranged, so if it's something that's tech or force, don't use Riot Gas. If there's a big sort of ranged attack, something like a Terminate charging on us, then using Riot Gas is pretty useful. Terminate is a large ranged attack generally that a lot of mobs do. Some bosses do that, so again just bear in mind what kind of damage you're taking. If we're taking tech damage, we're taking like fire damage or anything like that, then Riot Gas isn't going to be useful because the targets get slowed by 70% and suffer a 30% melee and ranged accuracy loss. So again, it's only ranged or melee, so big melee attacks and big ranged attacks, things like Terminate, things like Ravage as well, if they're doing things like that to us, then it's pretty useful. So just look at what you're getting attacked with. Everything else is going to be reactive shield, again, damage reduction by 25%. We can also use our shoulder cannon. You can also use your neural surge as well. That deals damage and stuns the targets for 2.5 seconds. Neural surge is pretty useful. For an AoE, there it is. Pretty useful for stunning and rooting things. Only really useful for when things are getting away from us, generally. But again, pretty useful actually. Battle focus, again, we probably pop that at the beginning if we've got the perk for it. We don't really crit. Critical chance by 25%. Crit as a tank. Don't like it. Don't like it. Let's get to our stats. The most important part of being a tank. Now the spec is called Shield Specialist. That is a clue as to what is our priority. It is shield chance is our top priority when it comes to gearing. Shield chance, we want to be above 40%. We want to get to 50% as quickly as possible. Absorb is pretty important. Absorb, again, shield and absorb, think of it as crit and surge, basically. So you get, there are things that boost our shield. And there are things like Energy Blast, which boost our Absorb by 25%, which is quite nice. So Absorb, yeah, Absorb can sit where it is. We're not going to be looking to stack any more Absorb. Defense, we probably want at least 15%. So we are a little bit short on defense. Again, defense is your chance to avoid melee and ranged attacks, essentially. Shield is mostly for things like energy or kinetic damage. So force and tech attacks tend to be energy or kinetic. Get our chance to shield that, and that's the percentage of damage prevented when an attack is absorbed by our shield. So again, we want shield's chance, tends to be our big thing. Most of our abilities revolve, most of our mitigation is, or revolves should I say, around us shielding an attack. Therefore, it is our priority is to get shield rating. Set bonus would be ideal. The old set bonus is pretty nice. Again, increases the duration of riot gas. The new set bonuses are pretty useful as well. Bear in mind, endurance isn't a stat that we really want to be too heavily into, to be honest. The augments that we're going to go for are shield. Shield augments we should be augmenting for. Shield is our top priority. Shield power. What I tend to do as a tank for gearing is I tend to go with things like the reflex barrels. That's what I tend to take. I tend to take sometimes as well overkill augments. A couple of overkill, maybe about 2. This one needs updating, it's only a 28 one. But yeah, I would take the reflex barrel. It's going to help you out with threat generation. There's not a huge difference between reflex and commando, but again, it's going to help you out. Particularly single target threat can be a bit of a problem. So getting that extra aim, getting that extra damage. So I have 2 overkill mods just for extra power. I don't really want the endurance, I just want the power really, again, to help me with threat. Help me get a little bit of threat. That's the way I do it. I tend to do it. Go for the reflex barrel and go for a power, an augment. What's the augment called? Relics. We generally want things that are going to increase our absorb. Shielding attack grants 810 absorb for 8 seconds. Again, shield is our priority, so again, shielding an attack, and we've got the reactive warding one, which just gives us a protection for a little bit of damage, which is nice, gives us a little bit of protection. Our worst stat tends to be aim. We don't really care about aim, to be honest with you. We care more about power than aim, because we're never ever going to hit the diminishing return point of power, so there's really little point in stacking aim. Crit is a waste of time as well. We don't want crit. The thing about crit is too inconsistent as a tank. We want that consistency, so we want to be going with power augments. That's generally why we don't take, when we take the DPS augment we take overkill and not reflex. That's basically the reason for it. But every other augment should be shield. Otherwise, I tend to take a couple of them just because that's the way I like to build my Vanguard tank. It's the way I've done it. It's the way I've always done it. So anyway, we've rattled on for a long time. We've covered this tank. We've never done a tank before, but again, have tried a bit of tanking. I'm not comfortable with tanking, to be honest. More comfortable as a healer. So anyway, that is all for this video. So thank you for joining me, and we'll see you again soon, and goodbye.